The day a human pulled an emperor across the Senate floor. Part 1. The arrival on a distant planet known as Axion Prime, humanity had established its first interstellar colony. Among the settlers was Daniel Carter, a young historian tasked with documenting the interactions between humans and the native species, the Kryn, a towering insectoid race ruled by their enigmatic emperor, Zarathus. The Kryn were not hostile but deeply hierarchical, with every decision flowing from their emperor's will. One day, during a diplomatic session in the Grand Hall of the Kryn Senate, tensions flared when Rachel Monroe, Earth's ambassador, attempted to negotiate trade rights for rare minerals found on Axion Prime. Zarathus grew impatient, dismissing her arguments as irrelevant. His guards began closing in around the human delegation, creating an uneasy atmosphere. It was then that Daniel noticed something peculiar about Zarathus. He seemed frail, almost unsteady on his 6 legs, despite his imposing size. As the meeting dissolved into chaos, Daniel whispered to Rachel, "There's more going on here than meets the eye." Or in Part 2, Secrets Beneath the Throne back at the Human Enclave, Daniel shared his suspicions with Rachel and another settler, Emily Dawson, who worked as a xenobiologist studying the Kryn physiology. Emily revealed that she had discovered anomalies in Zarathus' biology, signs of decay and weakness hidden beneath his armored exoskeleton. She theorized that the Emperor might be dying, which could explain why he clung so desperately to power. Meanwhile, word spread among the Kryn populace that the humans sought to undermine their sacred traditions. A faction led by General Vrax, a militant Kryn commander, demanded immediate action against the settlers. Fearing outright war, Rachel decided they needed proof of Zarathus's condition to sway the Kryn Senate toward peace, but obtaining such evidence would require infiltrating the imperial palace, a task considered impossible. Daniel volunteered, driven by a mix of curiosity and desperation. "If I can get close enough," he said, "maybe I can expose the truth without starting a war." Part 3. Into the heart of the hive disguised in a stolen Kryn worker's shell, Daniel ventured into the labyrinthine corridors of the Imperial Palace. He navigated through bustling chambers filled with drones carrying supplies and couriers rushing messages. Along the way, he encountered Lyra, a young Kryn female working as a servant. Sensing his nervousness, she offered to guide him deeper into the complex. Lyra confided in Daniel, revealing her own doubts about Zarathus' leadership. Her brother had been conscripted into Vrax's army, and she feared for his life if war broke out. Together, they reached the inner sanctum where Zarathus resided. Through a crack in the door, Daniel witnessed the Emperor struggling to stand, his once mighty frame now brittle and broken. Guards propped him up, ensuring no one saw his vulnerability. With Lyra's help, Daniel recorded footage of Zarathus' decline using a concealed device. As they fled the palace, however, they triggered an alarm. Pursued by Vrax's soldiers, Daniel and Lyra barely escaped with their lives. Part 4. A bold move at the next Senate Assembly, Rachel presented the evidence Daniel had gathered. The chamber erupted in outrage as the Kryn senators watched, their revered emperor falter before their eyes. Vrax accused the humans of fabricating lies, calling for their immediate execution. Tensions escalated until Daniel stepped forward, addressing the crowd in halting but earnest Kryn speech. "Your emperor is not invincible," he declared. "He is mortal, like all beings. Denying this truth only weakens your people further." Zarathus, too weak to resist, admitted the validity of the recordings. In a shocking turn of events, General Vrax seized the opportunity to physically drag Zarathus across the Senate floor, symbolically stripping him of his authority. The act sent shockwaves through the chamber, leaving both humans and Kryn stunned. Rachel seized the moment to propose a new alliance, one based on mutual respect and cooperation rather than domination. The Kryn senators murmured among themselves, divided but intrigued by the idea. Part 5. A New Dawn. In the weeks that followed, the Kryn underwent a transformation. Without Zarathus's iron grip, the Senate began implementing reforms inspired by the principles of equality and shared governance introduced by the humans. Lyra emerged as a voice for change, advocating for peaceful coexistence between the two species. For Daniel, the experience changed everything. Once a passive observer, he had become a catalyst for progress. Rachel praised his bravery, though Daniel humbly insisted it was Lyra who truly deserved credit. Their bond deepened, transcending the boundaries of species and culture, as the sun set over Axion Prime, casting golden light across the colony. Daniel stood beside Rachel and Emily, gazing at the horizon. "We've taken the first step," Rachel said softly. "But there's still so much work to do." Daniel nodded, feeling hopeful for the future. On this alien world, humanity had proven that even the smallest actions could ripple outward, reshaping destinies far beyond what anyone imagined. End document. On a distant planet called Axion Prime, humanity had built its first colony among the stars. The planet was strange and wild, with towering crystal trees that shimmered under 3 suns and rivers of liquid silver winding through rocky plains. It was not Earth, but it was home now for the settlers who had traveled light years to start a new life. Among them was Daniel Carter, a young man with a passion for history. His job was to document everything, the struggles, the discoveries, and most importantly, the interactions between humans and the native species known as the Kryn. The Kryn were unlike anything Daniel had ever seen before. They stood over 10 feet tall on 6 spindly legs, their bodies covered in a hard, glossy exoskeleton that reflected light like mirrors. Their heads were elongated, with large, compound eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. Despite their intimidating appearance, they were not violent by nature. Instead, they lived in strict hierarchies ruled by an emperor named Zorathus, whose word was law. Everything the Kryn did flowed from his commands, making him both revered and feared. Daniel spent much of his time observing the Kryn during diplomatic meetings held in the grand hall of their Senate. The hall itself was enormous, with walls made of polished black stone engraved with intricate patterns that seemed to shift when you looked at them too long. In the center of the room sat Zorathus on a raised platform, surrounded by his advisors and guards. Humans were allowed to attend these sessions, but only as guests, never equals. This fact irritated Rachel Monroe, Earth's ambassador to Axion Prime, who believed humanity deserved more respect after all they had contributed to the colony's survival. One particular day, tensions ran high in the Senate chamber. Rachel was trying to negotiate trade rights for rare minerals found deep within the planet's crust. These minerals, known as axionite, were incredibly valuable back on Earth and could revolutionize energy production. But Zorathus showed little interest in her arguments. He shifted uncomfortably on his perch, his glowing eyes flickering as if he couldn't focus. When Rachel pressed further, explaining how cooperation would benefit both species, Zorathus interrupted her with a sharp click of his mandibles. "Enough," he said in a voice that echoed unnaturally, even though no translation device was visible. "Your words mean nothing here. We have no need for your trinkets or promises." Rachel clenched her fists but forced herself to remain calm. She glanced at Daniel, who stood nearby with a datapad in hand, jotting down notes. He noticed something odd about Zorathus, something subtle but unmistakable. For a creature supposed to be the pinnacle of strength and authority, the Emperor looked unsteady. His movements were jerky, almost hesitant, and his legs trembled slightly beneath him. Daniel leaned closer to Rachel and whispered, "There's something wrong with him." "What do you mean?" Rachel asked, keeping her voice low so the Kryn wouldn't hear. "He doesn't look right," Daniel replied. "I don't think he's as strong as everyone thinks he is." Before Rachel could respond, the situation escalated. General Vrax, a towering Kryn warrior with jagged scars running along his exoskeleton, stepped forward. His presence alone commanded attention. "These humans waste our time," he growled, pointing one clawed limb toward Rachel. "They come here seeking favors, yet offer nothing in return. Perhaps it is time we reminded them of their place." The other senators murmured in agreement, their glowing eyes fixed on the human delegation. Guards began moving closer, forming a tight circle around Rachel, Daniel, and the rest of the team. The air grew thick with tension, and Daniel felt his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't sure what would happen next, but it didn't look good. Rachel raised her hands slowly, trying to defuse the situation. "We are not here to cause trouble," she said firmly. "We want to work together. There's no reason for conflict." But Vrax wasn't listening. He turned to Zarathus, waiting for the Emperor's approval to take action. To everyone's surprise, Zarathus hesitated. For a moment, it seemed like he might actually consider Rachel's words. Then, with a weary sigh, he waved a limb dismissively. "Remove them," he ordered, his voice barely audible. "This session is over." As the humans were escorted out of the chamber, Daniel couldn't shake the image of Zarathus struggling to maintain control. Something was clearly wrong with the Emperor, and whatever it wasn't just physical. Daniel wondered if the Kryn themselves realized how fragile their leader had become, or if they simply refused to see it. Back at the human enclave, Rachel gathered her team to discuss what had happened. The settlement was modest but functional, with prefabricated buildings arranged around a central plaza. Solar panels lined the rooftops, powering everything from communication arrays to water purifiers. Despite the challenges of living on an alien world, the colonists had managed to create a semblance of normalcy. "We can't just sit back and wait for them to attack us," Rachel said, pacing back and forth in the meeting room. "If Vrax gets his way, we'll be at war before we know it." Emily Dawson, a biologist who specialized in studying the Kryn, nodded thoughtfully. She had been analyzing samples taken from the environment and occasionally from injured Kryn workers brought in for treatment. "There's something else going on here," she said. "I've noticed anomalies in the biological data I've collected. Some of the Kryn seem unhealthy, weak even." Daniel perked up at this. "Like Zarathus?" Emily tilted her head. "Possibly. If I had access to more information, maybe I could figure out what's causing it." Rachel crossed her arms. "That's easier said than done. Getting close to Zarathus is practically suicide. But if we could prove he's not the invincible ruler everyone thinks he is, it might give us leverage." Daniel felt a spark of determination ignite within him. "Let me try," he said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him, surprised by his boldness. "I've spent enough time watching them. I know how they behave. Maybe I can find a way to get inside the palace and gather some evidence." Rachel studied him carefully. "Are you sure about this? It's dangerous." "I'm sure," Daniel replied. "If we don't act, we're just waiting for Vrax to make his move. And if that happens, none of us will be safe." Rachel finally nodded. "All right, but be careful. We can't afford to lose anyone else." That night, as Daniel lay in bed staring at the ceiling, he replayed the events of the day in his mind. He thought about Zarathus's trembling legs, the way the Emperor had struggled to stay composed. Whatever was happening to the Kryn leadership, it was bigger than any of them realized, and somehow Daniel knew he was meant to uncover the truth, even if it meant risking everything. The next morning, Daniel met with Emily in the lab to discuss how they could investigate Zarathus's condition further. The lab was small but efficient, filled with microscopes, sample trays, and shelves stocked with vials of strange substances, collected from Axion Prime. Emily had already pulled up some data on her computer screen, pointing to graphs and charts that showed unusual patterns in the Kryn's biological makeup. "Look at this," she said, tapping the screen. "These readings are from a wounded Kryn worker we treated last week. His exoskeleton was cracked, and underneath his tissue was breaking down faster than it should. It's like their bodies are deteriorating from the inside out." Daniel frowned. "Do you think Zarathus is suffering from the same thing?" "It's possible," Emily replied. "If he's older or has been exposed to something harmful, it could explain why he seems so weak. But without direct access to him, I can't say for sure." Rachel entered the room just then, carrying a tablet with updated reports from the colony's security team. "We've got bigger problems," she announced. "Word is spreading among the Kryn that we're trying to undermine their traditions. Vrax is using it as an excuse to rally support for attacking us." Daniel felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Then we need to act fast. If we can prove Zarathus is sick or dying, maybe we can convince the Senate that working with us is better than fighting. Rachel nodded. But getting into the palace won't be easy. It's heavily guarded, and even if you manage to sneak in, one wrong move could get you killed. I'll do whatever it takes, Daniel said firmly. If I can find proof of Zarathus's condition, it might be enough to stop Vrax before he starts a war. With Rachel's reluctant approval, Daniel began preparing for his mission. He spent hours studying maps of the Imperial Palace, which had been pieced together from satellite images and sketches made by settlers who had visited the area. The palace was massive, a sprawling complex of black stone towers connected by narrow bridges and winding corridors. Its layout was confusing, designed to disorient intruders. Guards patrolled every entrance and surveillance drones hovered overhead, scanning for threats. To blend in, Daniel borrowed a discarded Kryn worker's shell, a hollowed-out exoskeleton, left behind after a molt. It was heavy and awkward to wear, but it would provide some cover if he moved carefully. He practiced walking on stilts to mimic the Kryn's six-legged gait, wobbling at first but eventually finding his balance. By the time night fell, he felt ready, or as ready as he could be. Under the cover of darkness, Daniel set out for the palace. The journey took longer than expected, as he had to avoid patrols and stay hidden in the shadows cast by the towering crystal trees. When he finally reached the outer walls of the complex, he paused to catch his breath. The air smelled metallic, tinged with the faint aroma of alien flowers that bloomed only under the light of Axion Prime's moons. As Daniel approached the main gate, he noticed a young Kryn female hauling crates of supplies into the building. She was smaller than most of her kind, with smoother armor and softer movements. Her name tag read Lyra. Hoping she might help him gain entry, Daniel stepped forward cautiously, keeping his posture low to appear less threatening. "Excuse me," he said in broken Kryn, using phrases he had memorized from recordings. "I am here to deliver tools." Lyra stopped and turned to look at him, her large eyes narrowing slightly. For a moment, Daniel thought she might call for the guards, but instead she tilted her head curiously. "You don't look like a worker," she said in halting English, surprising him. Daniel hesitated, unsure whether to trust her. "I'm new," he replied carefully. "Can you show me where to go?" Lyra studied him for another moment, then nodded. "Follow me. But if you cause trouble, I will not protect you." Inside the palace, Daniel marveled at its scale and complexity. Corridors stretched endlessly in every direction, lined with glowing runes that pulsed faintly like heartbeats. Workers scurried about, carrying bundles of fabric, metal rods, and other materials Daniel couldn't identify. Lyra led him through a side passage, explaining that this route avoided the main guard stations. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered as they walked. "If anyone finds out, we'll both be punished." "I have to see Zarathus," Daniel admitted quietly. "Something is wrong with him, and I need to know what it is." Lyra glanced at him sharply. "Why does it matter to you?" "Because if he falls, your people will suffer, and mine too. War isn't the answer." For a moment, Lyra didn't respond. Then she sighed. "Zarathus is not well. Everyone knows, but no one speaks of it. Vrax wants to take control, and many follow him because they fear change. But war will destroy us all." Daniel nodded. "That's why I need evidence. Something to show the Senate that peace is better than conflict." Lyra hesitated again, then motioned for him to follow her deeper into the palace. They climbed a series of narrow staircases until they reached a dimly lit hallway. At the end stood two massive doors carved with intricate designs. Beyond them, Daniel could hear muffled voices and the occasional scrape of claws against stone. "This is as far as I can take you," Lyra said. "Be careful. The Emperor's chamber is guarded, but there is a vent above the door. You may be able to see inside from there." "Thank you," Daniel whispered. "I won't forget this." Lyra gave him a small nod before disappearing back, down the stairs. Heart pounding, Daniel climbed onto a nearby ledge and hoisted himself up to the vent. Peering through the grate, he saw Zorathus sitting on a raised platform, surrounded by advisors and attendants. The Emperor was even frailer up close. His legs trembled visibly, and his mandibles clicked weakly as he tried to speak. Several guards propped him upright, ensuring he maintained the illusion of strength. Daniel activated the recording device hidden in his pocket, capturing every detail. As he watched, Zorathus suddenly slumped forward, nearly falling off his perch. One of the attendants rushed to steady him, whispering urgently in Kryn. The Emperor waved them away irritably, though his movements were slow and unsteady. Just as Daniel finished recording, a loud clang echoed through the hallway. Startled, he lost his grip and tumbled back down to the floor. The noise drew the attention of nearby guards, who immediately began converging on his position. Panicking, Daniel scrambled to his feet and bolted down the corridor, clutching the device tightly. Behind him, shouts rang out and the sound of clattering legs grew louder. Daniel ducked into a storage room, hiding behind stacks of crates as the guards raced past. His heart thundered in his chest as he waited for the commotion to die down. Once the coast was clear, he slipped out of the palace and retraced his steps, back to the human enclave. When he finally returned, exhausted and covered in dust, Rachel and Emily were waiting for him. "Did you get it?" Rachel asked anxiously. Daniel held up the device. "I got it, and it's worse than we thought." Together, they gathered around the computer to review the footage. What they saw confirmed their worst fears. Zorathus was dying, his body failing him while his people remained oblivious to the truth. Armed with this knowledge, Rachel knew they had a chance to change the course of events, but doing so would require courage, strategy, and a willingness to confront the Kryn Senate head-on. The next morning, Rachel called a meeting with her team to plan their next move. The footage Daniel had captured was clear and undeniable. Zorathus was not the strong, unshakable ruler the Kryn believed him to be. His frailty was obvious, even to someone unfamiliar with the species. But proving this to the Kryn Senate would not be easy. They were deeply loyal to their emperor, and questioning his authority could provoke outrage, or worse, violence. "We need to present this carefully," Rachel said, pacing back and forth in the meeting room. "If we accuse Zorathus directly, they'll see it as an insult. We have to make them realize the truth without making it seem like we're attacking their culture." Emily nodded, studying the video again on her tablet. "What if we frame it as concern for their future? Show them that relying on a dying leader isn't good for their people," Daniel agreed. "And we should mention how working together could benefit everyone. If they think cooperation will help stabilize things, they might listen." Rachel stopped pacing and looked at Daniel. "You're going to have to speak up during the next session. You've seen Zorathus up close. Your testimony will carry weight." Daniel felt a flicker of nervousness but nodded. "I'll do it. But I'll need your help to get my words right." For the rest of the day, the team worked on crafting a message that balanced honesty with diplomacy. They rehearsed what Daniel would say, practicing until he felt confident enough to face the Kryn Senate. Meanwhile, Rachel sent word to the colony's security team to prepare for any potential backlash. No one knew how the Kryn would react, and caution was essential. The following morning, the human delegation returned to the Grand Hall of the Senate. The atmosphere was tense, with General Vrack standing prominently near Zorathus' platform, his scarred exoskeleton gleaming under the light. The other senators muttered among themselves, casting suspicious glances at the humans. It was clear that news of Daniel's infiltration had reached them, though no one mentioned it outright. When the session began, Rachel stepped forward first, addressing the chamber in calm but firm tones. "We come today not as enemies but as allies who wish to see both our peoples thrive. There is much we can achieve together if we work toward common goals." Vrax clicked his mandibles dismissively. "Your words are empty promises. You seek only to exploit us." Before Rachel could respond, Daniel stepped forward, clutching the device containing the footage. His hands trembled slightly, but he forced himself to speak clearly. "I understand your doubts, but please hear me out. I have seen something important, something that affects all of you." He activated the recording, projecting the image of Zarathus onto a nearby wall. The Emperor's weakness was impossible to ignore. His trembling legs, his slumped posture, the way his attendants struggled to keep him upright. A murmur rippled through the chamber as the Kryn senators watched in stunned silence. "This is not meant to shame or disrespect anyone," Daniel continued, his voice steady now. "But it shows that change is coming whether you want it or not. Relying on a single leader leaves your people vulnerable. Working together, with us, can create a stronger future for everyone." The room erupted into chaos. Some senators shouted angrily, accusing the humans of deception. Others stared at Zarathus, their glowing eyes wide with shock. Vrax moved closer to the platform, his claws flexing as if ready to strike. Zarathus himself remained silent, his expression unreadable beneath his armored face. Then unexpectedly, Lyra stepped forward from the crowd. She had accompanied the delegation as an observer, claiming she wanted to learn more about human ways. Now she addressed the Senate in a clear, unwavering voice. "This human speaks the truth. I saw Zarathus myself when I guided this one into the palace. He is not well, and pretending otherwise endangers us all." Her words silenced the chamber. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Zarathus raised a trembling limb, signaling for quiet. When he spoke, his voice was weak, but still carried authority. "Enough. Let us not deny what is plain to see." Vrax seized the opportunity. With a roar of defiance, he lunged at Zarathus, grabbing the Emperor by one leg and dragging him off the platform. The act was brutal and shocking, sending waves of panic through the chamber. Guards rushed to intervene, but Vrax bellowed orders, declaring himself the new ruler of the Kryn. Rachel grabbed Daniel's arm, pulling him back as the scene unfolded. "Stay close," she whispered. "This could turn ugly." As Vrax paraded Zarathus across the floor, humiliating him before the entire Senate, Daniel realized the gravity of what had just happened. The Kryn hierarchy was crumbling, and power was shifting in unpredictable ways. Yet amidst the chaos, there was also an opening, a chance to push for peace while the Kryn grappled with their internal struggles. When the commotion finally died down, Rachel approached the remaining senators cautiously. "This is a turning point for your people," she said. "Let it be a chance to build something better, not just for yourselves, but for both our species." The Kryn hesitated, their glowing eyes flickering with uncertainty. But slowly, some began nodding in agreement. The seed of change had been planted, and though the road ahead would be difficult, hope lingered in the air. Back at the Enclave later that evening, Daniel sat alone in his quarters, replaying the events in his mind. What had started as a simple mission to gather information had spiraled into something far greater. He thought about Lyra and how her courage had helped expose the truth. He thought about Zarathus, whose pride had blinded him to his own decline. And he thought about the fragile alliance now forming between humans and Kryn, an alliance that would require trust, patience, and sacrifice. As he gazed out the window at the shimmering crystal trees bathed in moonlight, Daniel felt a strange sense of purpose. This was only the beginning, and whatever came next, he knew he would face it head-on. The days following the dramatic events in the Senate were tense and uncertain. The Kryn society, once rigid and orderly under Zarathus' rule, now teetered on the edge of chaos. General Vrax had seized control with brute force, declaring himself the new emperor. But his rise to power was met with mixed reactions. Some Kryn supported him, drawn to his strength and promises of unity through discipline. Others, however, resented his violent methods and feared what his leadership might mean for their future. For the human settlers, the situation was precarious. While Vrax's takeover created an opening to push for peace, it also heightened the risk of conflict. His aggressive nature made him unpredictable, and his disdain for humans was no secret. Rachel knew they had to act quickly to solidify their position before Vrax could consolidate his authority. "We need to show them that we're not a threat," Rachel said during another strategy meeting. "If we can prove our value as allies, some of the senators might side with us instead of Vrax." Emily nodded. We should focus on practical solutions, things that benefit both species, like sharing medical knowledge or helping improve their infrastructure, Daniel added. And we shouldn't forget Lyra. She's already shown she's willing to help. Maybe she can be a bridge between us and the other Kryn. Rachel agreed. Let's reach out to her, see if she can rally more supporters among the younger Kryn who might be open to change. That evening, Daniel arranged a secret meeting with Lyra outside the colony's perimeter. They chose a quiet spot near one of the crystal forests, where the shimmering trees cast soft, multicolored light across the ground. Lyra arrived cautiously, her movements quick and alert. When she saw Daniel waiting alone, she relaxed slightly, but kept her distance. You took a big risk coming here, Daniel said softly. Thank you. Lyra tilted her head, studying him with her large, glowing eyes. I didn't do it for you. I did it for my people. Vrax will destroy everything if he isn't stopped. We know, Daniel replied. That's why we need your help. There are others like you, Kryn, who want peace, not war. If we work together, maybe we can convince the Senate to choose cooperation over violence. Lyra hesitated, her mandibles clicking faintly as she thought. It won't be easy. Many fear change, and Vrax has already begun spreading lies about humans, that you're weak and unworthy of trust. That's why we need to show them otherwise, Daniel said firmly. We have skills and resources that can help the Kryn thrive. All we ask is for a chance to prove it. After a long pause, Lyra finally nodded. I'll try, but you must be careful. Vrax watches everyone now. If he suspects betrayal, there will be consequences. Over the next few days, Lyra worked quietly, to gather support among the younger Kryn workers and servants. She spoke to those disillusioned by Vrax's harsh tactics, emphasizing the benefits of working with humans rather than against them. Slowly, a small group began to form, Kryn willing to listen and consider alternatives to Vrax's vision of dominance. Meanwhile, Rachel and Emily focused on preparing tangible examples of human-Kryn collaboration. They organized demonstrations, showcasing advanced tools and techniques that could improve the Kryn's daily lives. For instance, they introduced irrigation systems that could increase crop yields and energy-efficient lighting powered by axionite crystals. These innovations caught the attention of several key senators, who began questioning whether Vrax's isolationist approach was truly in their best interest. When the time came for another Senate session, Rachel led the human delegation with renewed confidence. This time, they brought prototypes of their inventions, setting them up in the center of the chamber for all to see. As the senators filed in, many paused to examine the displays, their curiosity piqued. Vrax glared at the humans from his newly claimed throne, his scarred exoskeleton gleaming menacingly. What trickery is this? He demanded, his voice echoing through the hall. You dare bring your machines into our sacred space? Rachel stepped forward calmly, addressing the chamber directly. These are not tricks, they are gifts. Tools, designed to strengthen your people and ours. We offer them freely, hoping to build a partnership based on mutual respect. Before Vrax could respond, one of the senators spoke up, a tall, elderly Kryn named Kalis, known for his wisdom. Enough of your threats, Vrax. Let us hear what these humans propose. Encouraged by Kalis's support, Rachel continued. We understand that times are changing for your people. Leadership is shifting, and decisions made now will shape your future. Working together offers stability and prosperity. Rejecting us only invites division and hardship. As Rachel spoke, Daniel noticed subtle nods from several senators, including some who had previously been hostile. Lyra stood near the back of the room, her presence unnoticed by most but reassuring to Daniel. Her efforts were paying off. Vrax growled in frustration, slamming a clawed limb against the armrest of his throne. You speak of unity, but your kind brings nothing but weakness. We do not need your charity. At that moment, Emily stepped forward holding up a small device. This is not charity, it's progress. Watch. She activated the device, which emitted a low hum as it projected a holographic map of Axion Prime onto the floor. The map highlighted areas rich in resources, along with potential sites for joint development projects. This technology allows us to plan efficiently and avoid conflicts over land or materials, Emily explained. Imagine what we could achieve if we combined our strengths. The senators leaned closer, intrigued by the display. Even Vrax seemed momentarily distracted, his glowing eyes narrowing as he studied the map. Sensing an opportunity, Rachel pressed, "Further. We are not asking for control or favoritism. We simply wish to coexist peacefully and share in the wealth of this planet. Together, we can ensure a brighter future for everyone." Her words resonated with many in the chamber, especially the younger senators influenced by Lyra's advocacy. One by one, they began voicing their agreement, challenging Vrax's authority. The general seethed with anger but found himself increasingly isolated as dissent grew louder. By the end of the session, a tentative resolution was reached. The Kryn Senate would form a committee to explore partnerships with the humans. It was a small victory, but a significant step toward lasting peace. As the humans left the hall, Daniel glanced back at Lyra, who gave him a brief nod of approval. Though challenges remained, hope lingered in the air. Change was slow, but it was happening. And Daniel knew they were on the right path.